Shalom everybody, and greetings from Jerusalem. Jane standing here in my small rental in Jerusalem. I want to make this personal video update because today is a very special day. Actually, 5 years ago today, just across the street, there's a big hotel, and I had the house of the Speaker and the Vice President of the United States staying in that hotel. We were marking 75 years since the liberation of Auschwitz-Birkenau, the concentration camp in Poland. That was 5 years ago. Today we mark International Holocaust Remembrance Day around the world. It's the day that the United Nations decided to mark as the International Holocaust Day because Auschwitz was liberated. And here we are 5 years later. So today world leaders are gathering in Poland to say never again, to mark the Holocaust Memorial Day. It's the 80th day today. I want to say that nothing compares to the Holocaust, full stop. It was the darkest chapter in world history, full stop. Full stop. Today, as I'm standing here in the Jewish capital, I want to honor and remember the a little bit more than 6 million Jews who was brutally murdered in the Holocaust in the most atrocious way, murdered for no other reason than being Jewish, taken to the camps, starved to death, being experimented on, sent in to the gas chambers. Today we honor the memory of all of them. All the years that I've been living here in Israel, I try to the best of my ability to go to Yad Vashem on this day, and I have written numerous blogs and articles about my experience being there on that day, being amongst Israeli soldiers who I was walking behind Israeli soldiers on that day, and I saw the tears down their faces. Many of them probably have had relatives who was murdered in the Holocaust. I have written articles, I have made a video speaking about it. This year, I'm still trying to get over influenza, so I was not able to go, but I want to take this opportunity to just make this video update and speak from my house. So today we honor all the people who was murdered in the Holocaust, and there are still Holocaust survivors alive today. So it's so easy to say never again, we remember, but what is the fact today in 2024? Well, the fact is that Jews are still being murdered around the world and in Israel for no other reason than just being Jewish. A couple of weeks ago, the Danish foreign minister was visiting Israel, and as me being a Danish citizen, it was a privilege for me to attend a media briefing that was held down here in the foreign ministry when the Danish foreign minister was visiting his Israeli counterpart, Gideon Saar. The Danish foreign minister had just been visiting Yad Vashem, the Holocaust museum here in Israel, which is something when foreign leaders are coming, it's always part of their schedule to go and visit the Holocaust Museum. So when I met him, I got a chance to ask him a question. And I said that as Danish citizen, him and me, we it's an honor to be Danish because of the legacy we have from the Second World War, where so many people in Denmark were saving the lives of Jewish people, including people in my family was saving Jewish people on their farm. So I asked the Danish foreign minister, I said, you just came from the Holocaust, you have been there, and now we had the 7 October massacre. Jews are still being murdered today for no other reason than being Jewish. Let me show you this lady. And I showed this photo to the Danish foreign minister, and I said, this is she was 83 years old, a Holocaust survivor. Her name was Ludmilla, and she was just brutally murdered in a terror attack. She survived the hell of the Holocaust just to be murdered in a terror attack here in Israel. I said, we have stabbing, we have shootings, we have rockets, we have missiles. What do you want to say to the Jewish people today? I got to ask that question to the Danish foreign minister. You see, during the Second World War, Jews were burned, killed, murdered, slaughtered. And then this happened. Jews were burned alive, zip-tied with their hands, when modern days Nazis, Hamas terrorists, breached into Israel and committed the worst atrocities towards the Jewish people since the Holocaust. Not comparing to the Holocaust, it stands for itself. But these atrocities, women was raped, mass raped, knives were jammed into their vaginas, nails was jammed into their vaginas, their breast was cut off, men's private parts was mutilated. They burned the babies, they burned people alive, they gouged out the eyes of fathers in front of their children, they chopped off their hands, and they committed the worst atrocities that we have seen since the Holocaust. The world watched in horror as all of this was unfolding, and since that day, October 7, Israel has been at war, not only with the modern days Nazis, Hamas, but also being attacked from Lebanon. Israel had more than 16,000 terror attacks in 2024, with the rockets, with the missiles, with the stabbing, the shooting, the ramming attacks. More than 150 people were murdered in heinous terror attacks in 2024 alone. Hamas also dragged 240 innocent civilians into the Gaza Strip, and here we are more than a year later, and there are still hostages held inside the Gaza Strip by Islamic Jihad, by Hamas, and also, as we have seen, by civilians in Gaza. Doctors was holding Israeli hostages. This is where we are at in 2024, where the world is still condemning Israel for what they are doing inside Gaza. When our people, and I'm saying our people because I live in Israel and have been for so many years, were the one who was brutally attacked on that day and are still being attacked today. 2 years ago, on this very day, on Holocaust Memorial Day, it was a Friday, a Hamas-affiliated terrorist living out in East Jerusalem got into his car. He drove out to Neve Yaakov, which is not far from here, and with an automatic weapon, he gunned down and he murdered 7 Jewish people around a synagogue right here in Jerusalem on International Holocaust Memorial Day. Last year, 7 people were brutally murdered when 2 terrorists with automatic weapons were shooting around a train station near Tel Aviv. During the Second Intifada, we had bus bombs, we have cafes blown up, hundreds of people were murdered. And what's happening now in 2025, in order for Israel to bring home their civilians who is held captive in Gaza, Israel is forced to release up until 2,000 terrorists who have carried out the most atrocious terror attacks, bus bombing, stabbing, shootings, killing hundreds and hundreds of innocent civilians. In order to get hostages home, we have to let out these wild savages. They have to go free. And the world just watched in silence. The world put the pressures on Israel and the Israeli government instead of putting the pressure on Hamas. We just saw 4 Israeli hostages being released, and they were surrounded by hundreds of wild terrorists, Islamic Jihad and Hamas terrorists, who is still showing full force in the Gaza Strip. And again, Israel is always being pressured and pressured and pressured to give in. So what's the solution from world leaders around the world when Israel is being attacked on 7 fronts, and missiles were raining in from Iran, missiles were raining in from Yemen, rockets from Hezbollah, from Hamas? What is the result? What is the demand of Israel while Jewish people are still being murdered in heinous terror attacks and they are still held hostage in the Gaza Strip? Well, you have to understand, if you want peace, you got to give up land, but you got to give up land to these savages because that's what they want. Then they will leave you alone. We gave Gaza away, Israel gave Gaza away, and that was turned into the biggest terrorist nest in the world, with the most sophisticated tunnel system going throughout the entire Gaza Strip, and with tunnels, shafts going into every school, every hospital, every mosque. It's completely outrageous. Every time Israel gives up more land, it means there are more dead Jews. Every time Israel is forced into a hostage release, it means more dead Jews. That is where we are at today in 2025 on International Holocaust Memorial Day. I wrote an article for Jerusalem Post where I'm actually putting down all of the things, the shooting, the rammings, the indictment in UNRWA schools and school books, how they are learning to kill the Jewish people, how the Palestinians are being sent into training camps in Gaza, learning to murder the Jews. I put it all down there for the world to see what the world are facing, is the Jewish people are facing, and I wrote it in a provocative way, like it was written from a terrorist saying we are doing this and this and this and this and this, and we are being rewarded because the world are deaf, dumb and blind, and they continue to pour in billions of dollars to UNRWA and to these organizations that these terrorists has taken over. They are deeply embedded with in Judea and Samaria and also out in Gaza. So if you missed that article, go find it. I will actually share a link when I post this video. So when world leaders are coming together today to celebrate the liberation of Auschwitz in Poland 80 years later, they are still saying to Israel, you got to give up land, you got to give up land, you got to give up land to these terrorists and savages who don't want a two-state solution. They want a Palestine free of Jews, which is all of Israel, while the Jewish people are still being persecuted, hunted and killed, which they have been down through history for no other reason than being Jews, and they are still being that's still happening today to the Jewish people, while we still have hostages inside Gaza. And in order to get them free, we have to release the most heinous, vile, demonic terrorists who have murdered hundreds and hundreds of Jews. That's the price Israel has to pay to get their civilians home. We are having innocent civilians who did nothing but was kidnapped out of their houses, waking up with Hamas terrorists bursting into their houses, taking phone from some of these Jews, and they live streamed murdering Jewish people so their families could watch online on Facebook pages how Hamas terrorists had breached into their house and they were burning people alive. And these Hamas terrorists are still inside the Gaza Strip, and they are celebrating now. Every time we have to have hostages are coming out, and they are having more terrorists being released. So it's a devastating situation here in Israel. We want the hostages home. The price is very, very high, and the world are still pressuring Israel, pressing Israel, pressing Israel, like there is anyone to negotiate peace with. The failed, corrupt terrorist in the suit, Abu Mazen Mahmoud Abbas, the leader of the corrupt Palestinian Authority, just made a phone call to one of these vile terrorists that was released, who murdered numerous Israelis, including a 9-month-old baby. And he congratulated him as a hero. That's the people we are dealing with in Israel on International Holocaust Memorial Day. So that was just a message from Jerusalem Jane, as I can't go to excuse me, to Yad Vashem because I still have influenza in my body. But for such a time as this, I'm losing my voice, united, we are standing with Israel and with the Jewish people, with their right to live in peace and security in their God-given homelands. Bye.